The rain hammered against the windows of the small Korean restaurant in Brooklyn as Simone pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the storm swallow the street whole. She ducked inside to escape the downpour, and now she sat alone at a corner table, her laptop open to a blank document that had been blank for 3 weeks. Writer's block was a cruel companion, especially when your publisher was waiting for a manuscript that felt impossible to write. "More tea." The voice was gentle, tinged with an accent that made the simple question sound like music. Simone looked up to find a man standing beside her table, holding a ceramic teapot. He had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, and an apron tied around his waist that read Jin's Kitchen in fading letters. There was something magnetic about him, something that made her forget to answer for a moment too long. "I'm sorry, yes, thank you." She pushed her cup toward him, watching as he poured with the careful attention of someone who treated every small gesture as if it mattered. "You've been staring at that screen for an hour," he said, a small smile playing at his lips. "The tea is free if you're suffering from writer's block. I have a policy about that." Simone laughed despite herself. "That's oddly specific. Do you get a lot of blocked writers in here?" "You're the first." He set the teapot down on her table and extended his hand. "I'm Junho. This is my grandmother's restaurant. Well, it's mine now, but it will always be hers, you know." His hand was warm when she shook it, and she found herself not wanting to let go. "Simone, and yes, I'm a writer, or at least I'm supposed to be. Right now I'm more of a professional procrastinator." "What are you writing about?" "Love." The word came out bitter, and she immediately regretted her tone. "A romance novel, which is ironic because I'm starting to think I don't believe in it anymore." Junho pulled out the chair across from her without asking and sat down. It should have felt intrusive, but somehow it didn't. "That's a sad thing to stop believing in." "Is it? Or is it just realistic?" Simone closed her laptop, suddenly more interested in this conversation than in the cursor that had been mocking her all afternoon. "Have you ever been in love?" He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the grain of the wooden table. "Once. She wanted me to give up this place, move to Seoul, become someone I wasn't. She said I was wasting my potential making kimchi jjigae in Brooklyn." He looked up, and there was no bitterness in his eyes, only acceptance. "But this restaurant is my grandmother's legacy. It's the smell of her kitchen, the recipes she whispered to me while she taught me to cook, the way she laughed when I burned the rice. How could I give that up for someone who couldn't understand it?" Simone felt something shift in her chest. "She didn't deserve you." "Maybe we didn't deserve each other. Maybe that's okay." He stood up, smoothing his apron. "I should get back to the kitchen. But Simone, if you want to remember what love looks like, watch the couples who come in here. Really watch them. The ones who have been together 40 years and still hold hands. The ones on first dates who can't stop smiling. Love isn't perfect, but it's real. It's as real as the rain outside." Over the following weeks, Simone found herself returning to Jin's kitchen almost every day. She told herself it was because the food was incredible, because the atmosphere was perfect for writing, because the tea was actually helping her think clearly. But she knew the truth. She was coming back for Junho. She learned that he woke up at 4 in the morning to make fresh kimchi, that his grandmother had raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 7, that he played guitar, but only when the restaurant was closed and he thought no one could hear. She learned that he noticed everything. The way she chewed her bottom lip when she was thinking, how she always ordered the same thing but pretended to consider the menu, the exact moment when her writer's block lifted and the words started flowing again. And he learned her too. He discovered that she was writing her 7th novel but still felt like a fraud every time someone called her an author, that her last relationship had ended when her ex told her she cared more about fictional characters than real people, that she'd grown up in Brooklyn but had spent the last 5 years running from it, living in different cities, chasing something she couldn't name. "You were running from yourself," Junho said one evening as he sat across from her after closing time. The restaurant was empty except for the two of them, the chairs upturned on tables, the lights dimmed to a soft glow. "That's very profound for someone who's never left Brooklyn," Simone teased, but her voice was soft. I don't need to leave to understand loneliness. He reached across the table and took her hand, and the world seemed to stop spinning. Simone, I think about you every morning when I'm chopping vegetables. I imagine what you'll order, what you'll write about, if today will be the day I'm brave enough to tell you that you've become the best part of my day. Her breath caught. Junho. I know it's fast. I know we're from different worlds. But my grandmother used to say that love doesn't follow a timeline. It follows the heart. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending electricity through her entire body. And my heart has been following you since the moment you walked in here soaked from the rain, looking lost and found at the same time. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared. I'm so scared of this, of how much I already feel for you, of how badly this could hurt if it doesn't work. Then let's be scared together. He stood up, still holding her hand, and pulled her to her feet. They stood there in the quiet restaurant, the city humming outside, the space between them charged with possibility. Dance with me. There's no music. There's always music if you listen hard enough. And somehow, impossibly, she heard it. The rhythm of the rain, the whisper of their breathing, the song of two hearts learning to beat in sync. Junho pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other still intertwined with hers, and they swayed in the dim light. Simone rested her head against his chest and felt the steady thrum of his heartbeat, and she thought that this, right here, was what she'd been trying to write about all along. I'm falling in love with you, she whispered into the space between them. I don't know how to stop it. Then don't. He tilted her chin up, his eyes searching hers. Simone, I'm already gone. I've been in love with you since you laughed at my tea policy, since you told me about the characters in your books like they were your friends. Since I realized that every day without you felt a little bit dimmer. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home. Like every romance novel she'd ever written was just practice for understanding this moment. His lips were soft and sure, his hands gentle as they cupped her face, and she melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck, pouring every unspoken word into that kiss. They pulled apart only when they needed to breathe, foreheads pressed together, smiling like fools. My family is going to have opinions, Simone said, reality creeping back in. My mother is very vocal about her preferences for my life. My restaurant community will gossip for months, Junho replied. Mrs. Kim next door has already asked me 3 times if you're my girlfriend. I think she has a betting pool going. Are you worried? He pulled back just enough to look at her fully, his hands sliding down to hold hers. Simone, I spent years watching my grandmother face discrimination, watching her fight to keep this restaurant open when people said Korean food would never succeed in this neighborhood. She taught me that love for food, for people, for dreams, requires courage. It requires you to stand firm even when the world pushes back. His grip tightened. I'm not worried. I'm ready. The months that followed were a beautiful chaos. Simone introduced Junho to her tight-knit family, and while her mother raised her eyebrows and her aunties whispered in the kitchen, they couldn't deny the way he looked at Simone like she hung the moon. He showed up to her nephew's birthday party with enough bulgogi to feed the entire block, and by the end of the night, he was teaching her cousins how to make kimbap, while her grandmother traded cooking secrets with him in broken English and animated gestures. Junho brought Simone to meet his extended family at the annual Korean Harvest Festival, and she felt the weight of curious stares, the whispered questions about the black woman holding their Junho's hand. But his aunt pulled her aside and said, He hasn't smiled like this since before his grandmother died. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And his cousin's wife hugged her tight and whispered, Welcome. We need more love in this family, not less. There were hard moments, too. The customer who refused to be served by Simone when she helped out at the restaurant during a busy dinner rush, who demanded to speak to the real staff. Junho's quiet fury as he asked that customer to leave and never return. The anonymous note shoved under the restaurant door calling their relationship an abomination. Simone's tears in the bathroom as she wondered if loving Junho meant subjecting him to hatred he didn't deserve. Hey, Junho found her there, slid down to sit beside her on the bathroom floor, and pulled her into his arms. You are not responsible for other people's ignorance. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are the love of my life, and if being with you means I have to face down 1,000 small-minded people, I'll do it every single day and count myself lucky. I don't want to make your life harder. You make my life worth living. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. Simone, before you, I was going through the motions. Wake up, cook, serve, sleep, repeat. You reminded me that life is supposed to be felt, not just survived. Don't you dare feel guilty for that. On the 1-year anniversary of the rainy day they met, Junho closed the restaurant early. He led Simone inside to find the space transformed. Fairy lights strung across the ceiling, candles on every table, rose petals scattered across the floor. Her favorite dishes were laid out like a feast, and soft music played from a speaker in the corner. Junho, what is all this? He took both her hands and pulled her to the center of the room, to the exact spot where they danced that first time. 1 year ago, you walked into my restaurant and my life changed. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone who fits into your world. It's about building a new world together. You've been patient with my early mornings and my kimchi-stained clothes. You've defended this restaurant to your friends and brought me coffee at 4 a.m. when you knew I was struggling. You've loved me through every imperfect moment. He dropped to one knee, and Simone's hands flew to her mouth. Simone, you write love stories for a living, so I'm a little terrified that my proposal won't measure up to the ones in your books. But here's the truth, the only truth that matters. I love you. I love your brilliant mind and your generous heart. I love how you cry during romantic comedies and how you always steal the last dumpling and think I don't notice. I love that you see me, not just the restaurant owner, not just the Korean guy, but me, all of me. He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a simple gold band with a single diamond that caught the candlelight. I'm not asking you to give up your dreams or change who you are. I'm asking you to keep being exactly yourself and to let me stand beside you while you do it. Will you marry me? Simone was crying so hard she could barely see, but she didn't need to see to know her answer. Yes, yes, Junho, of course yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, lifting her into his arms and spinning her around as she laughed and cried and kissed him all at once. When he finally set her down, they were both breathless and grinning. I finished my book, she said suddenly. The one I was struggling with when we met. I finished it last week. What's it about? Us. She cupped his face in her hands. It's about a woman who forgot how to believe in love until a man in a small restaurant reminded her that the best love stories aren't perfect. They're real. They're messy and complicated and brave. They're two people from different worlds deciding that their love is worth fighting for. What happens at the end? They get married in a small ceremony surrounded by people who matter. They promise to choose each other every single day, even when it's hard. They build a life that honors both of their cultures, both of their dreams. They have children who grow up bilingual and loved beyond measure. They grow old together in that same restaurant, still dancing in the kitchen when they think no one's watching. Junho's eyes were wet now too. I like that ending. Me too. She kissed him softly, sweetly, full of promise. And the best part, we get to live it. 2 years later, on a spring afternoon when the cherry blossoms were in full bloom, Simone and Junho stood hand in hand in the garden behind Jin's kitchen. She wore her grandmother's pearls and a flowing white dress that made her look like a dream. He wore a traditional hanbok that had belonged to his grandfather, and he couldn't stop crying happy tears. Their families sat together, her loud. Joyful relatives mixing with his quieter, more reserved extended family, the boundaries between them dissolving in the face of shared celebration. As they exchanged vows, Simone looked into Junho's eyes and thought about that rainy day, that moment of divine coincidence that had led her to seek shelter in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. She thought about every obstacle they'd overcome, every person who doubted them, every moment when love had felt too hard and they'd chosen it anyway. I promise to be your safe harbor, she said, her voice steady even as tears streamed down her face. I promise to choose you every morning and fight for us every night. I promise to honor your grandmother's recipes and our children's futures. I promise to dance with you in empty restaurants and fill our home with laughter. I promise to love you, not in spite of our differences, but because of the beautiful, complicated, perfect life those differences allow us to create together. Junho's voice shook as he spoke his vows. I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as you support mine. I promise to make you laugh when you're sad and to hold you when words aren't enough. I promise to build a life where our children know they are loved exactly as they are. I promise that this restaurant, this legacy, will become our legacy. A place where love is always on the menu, where everyone is welcome, where two worlds became one. I promise to love you with everything I am, for all the days I'm given. When they kissed as husband and wife, their families erupted in cheers, and Simone knew that this was the truest thing she'd ever written, the most authentic story she'd ever told. Because it wasn't fiction. It was real. It was theirs. Years later, when their daughter asked how they fell in love, Junho would pull Simone close and say, Your mother taught me that the best love stories start with someone brave enough to step in from the rain. And Simone would add, And your father taught me that sometimes the person you're looking for has been waiting for you all along, in a small restaurant in Brooklyn, ready to pour you tea and change your entire life. Their daughter would wrinkle her nose and say, That's so cheesy. But she'd smile anyway, because she could see it in the way they still looked at each other, that electric, undeniable thing that happens when two people who were supposed to be impossible become inevitable instead. If this story touched you, subscribe and share to friends and loved ones. See you in the next story.